Member of ICMA and the Association of Pennsylvania Municipal Management. She loves helping students find their path in public service and enjoys mentoring students interested in graduate studies in public affairs. Thank you so much for joining us today. Finally, Sarah Kogel-Smucker is the Montgomery County's Climate Change Officer. Sarah graduated with 580 capitalization from Brown College, majoring in philosophy. After working for nonprofit environmental organizations, she continued her education, achieving a JD magna cum laude at the Boston College Law School. There, she served as managing editor of the Boston College Environmental Affairs Law Review and received the Robert S. Pitcock Memorial Public Service Scholarship. Sarah began her government service career as an assistant corporation counsel in the New York City Law Department's Environmental Division. She advanced to senior counsel, acting as primary counsel for the development of a stronger, more resilient New York City's comprehensive plan to rebuild from Hurricane Sandy, guided agencies on environmental policy, and conducted litigation. She then served as Special Assistant Attorney General, Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia, where she conducted complex litigation, administrative advocacy, and investigation. Sarah then had the opportunity to spearhead the creation of the Climate Change Division of the District of Columbia's Office of the People's Council, where she advocated for equitable climate change solutions at local, regional, and federal levels, and to empower district consumers through educational initiatives. In her current role, she now serves as Montgomery County's climate officer with ambitious goals for an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, climate change pollution by 2027, and 100% by 2035. The climate change officer leads the county's community-wide climate goals through coordination and collaboration with county departments on climate change planning, implementation, and management of organizational initiatives and programs. As a reminder, each panelist will speak about their organization and experiences. Then we will have plenty of time for your questions about state and local government. Peter, turn things over to you.
Thanks. Those who've seen my song and dance in previous years know how to stand.
Swap this thing with it.
Thank you.
Bruce. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate spending some time together this morning talking about the opportunities in state and local government. So my name is Peter Morrissey, as the introduction so generously laid out, and I'm so excited to be here today to talk with you and learn and learn from you about all the great skills that you have that you can bring to bear on the significant important challenges that exist in state and local government. I also want to congratulate you on the great honor at a young age of being recognized for your academic achievements and the choice, and it is a choice, to explore careers in service. And for those of us who have worked in government, we are appreciative that you are going to apply your not inconsiderable talents to work like this when there may be other easier or more remunerative routes. So we're going to undermine some of those expectations today. I'm excited to kick this off to talk about how state and local government service fits into the broader public service firmament. Am I right that you had a federal briefing yesterday? Cool. We'll do some contrasts and we'll have some good-natured comparison of your opportunities here versus your opportunities there. I have worked with both, so can reflect on the trade-offs associated with federal service and non-federal service. Before I tell you a little about myself and a little about this work, I want to say a few things about you to orient us. First, we all know that you're smart, you are well informed. You do not need a civics lecture on the branches of government. What we're going to try and do today is give you some tips on how you can think about the opportunities that exist in state and local government vis-a-vis elsewhere. We know that you're midway through your college careers, majoring in liberal arts and sciences, and sorting out the path ahead. We know that only 15% of you, that is 3 responses out of 20, indicated an explicit interest in state and local government. We're going to try and bend that upward so it's at the very least on your radar going forward. That's okay, we're all getting 90 once. We know that we're well qualified and you have the world ahead of you. And we want to make sure that you're keeping state and local government on the purview. So to structure this out, we're going to go through 3 questions. First, why should you care about state and local government? Second, why does state and local government need you? And I don't mean you generally, as in folks starting their careers. I mean you specifically, people with skills and backgrounds and attributes that I know you possess. And 3, how can you think about getting your foot in the door? And then when I'm done with those helpless generalities, then we're going to talk to folks who are currently doing this work who can give you some really tactile ways in. So First, this great introduction on the background of Volcker Alliance. Volcker Alliance empowers the public sector workforce to solve the challenges facing our nation. We care about educating and connecting and empowering and inspiring people to pursue careers in public service at all levels. So now, I am organizationally agnostic on the path of service you pursue as long as it is in government. For our purposes today, I will be an unbound partisan for state and local service. Who am I? Why am I talking to you? A good, incredible question. I lead our public talent portfolio, which means my job is for governments to understand how they can position themselves as better employers, to get the sorts of folks like you interested and excited in working for them. And it also means that I work with colleges, universities, and other training and educational institutions to think about how they can better pilot folks together. One way to think about this, which may or may not be your preferred way of thinking about government careers, is it works like a market, any other market. There's some demand and there's some supply, and we need to come together. I work in local government, as you noted, and federal government, and the civic sector. I'm Project Kappa. Who's the Ford University? Hey, nice. Which campus?
Lincoln Center.
All right, well, nobody's working. Also, one other background, who's from Nebraska? Nice. So, wait, two of you are from Nebraska? Where from? Beautiful, and? Okay, where in Omaha?
We're from the same high school.
Which high school? Nice. All right, I was right. That's great. Cool. All right, and Portfolio is nice guys. So I'll let you read that in that one. So question one, I foreshadowed and signposted nicely. Why should you care about state and local government? So three general reasons that we'll validate with some data. The expectation that you would like evidence, and when someone makes a claim, so I'm going to do my best to provide it. First, there are immense opportunities in local and state government, and by immense, I mean at a scale unparalleled across any other sector in the economy. So this is a little bit of a quiz, I bet you can reason it out, but this is four possible breakdowns of the jobs across the public sector in the United States. There are about 22 million, I'm rounding them off to the nearest million here, give or take 100,000. Which, if blue is local government, and orange is state government, and gray is federal government, which of these four distributions reflects the actual distribution of jobs across the three levels of government? Shout out a letter.
C.
Those of you gravitating towards the center are very good in understanding the psychology of standardized tests, but in this case, the answer is C. The overwhelming proportion, your briefing on the federal government yesterday emphasized the federal government's size at about 2.2 million employees. They're that little gray sliver that the other two levels of government are in. The absolute majority of public sector roles in the United States are in local government, and the states outnumber the feds 3-1. This is often difficult to see here in Washington, surrounded by all these federal institutions. As my federal colleagues no doubt noted, 85% of all federal jobs are outside of the capital region. Other than the city government of the District of Columbia, 100% of all state and local jobs are outside the district. So resetting your expectations on where there are opportunities is a good first step. And when you're graduating from college, I would imagine you would feel some pressure or hear some questions about relocating to somewhere else for a given career interest. You gotta go to wherever because that's where whatever interest is. Government is not like that. Government serves people and therefore it's located where people are. And there's a substantial portion of the employment market in every corner of the country in government. In no state is the public sector less than 10% of the workforce. In many, it is modestly in excess of 20. The takeaway here is wherever you would want to live, for whatever set of reasons you would want to live there, you have career opportunities in government. I think that is the thing people sometimes miss. It's a little bit trivial and not obvious, but we want to make sure we put it on the map. If you're thinking about service, and you are not thinking about state and local government, you are truly missing the forest of the trees. So another warrant for my claim up top, state and local governments deliver every sort of service. They do everything nationally. So at a general level, I want everyone to remember that any job you could have that you have heard of, that you have met someone out in the world having, there is an analog of that in state and local government. It may not be called that always, there's amusing titling things I'll touch on a little bit later, but almost every discipline is recommended with an orientation towards services, substantial advantage over some other sectors of the economy. So another fun quiz, it's early on Friday morning. Which of the services on here are delivered by state and local governments and which are not? Shout out some that are. You're skimming this list and say that's definitely done by state and local government. Excellent. So hearing a good smattering, public schools, public health, correct. Here's a substantial subset. Most of these roles are administered by state and local government. There's a few things that my federal colleagues may have leaned into yesterday that would make you think, yeah, I guess that's more federally focused. If my interest sits in these policy areas, I really should be focusing on the federal level. Of course, that was classic bait switch. Beautifully, whoever said all of them just a little too quietly can now get credit. That was a lie. Everything on this list is either driven by or administered by state and local government. Some things in government are done fundamentally by state and local government, public schools or transit. Other things are maybe funded by the feds or administered by the feds or set up by the feds, but ultimately brought to people through the instrument of state and local government. There are a tiny number of people in Washington, D.C. who work for CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, 4,500 of them. There are tens of thousands of people across states and localities who make sure people get access to Medicaid in particular, which is administered through the states. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. The nature of that work also, just using that one program example, is pretty different. If you work for CMS, you'll be slogging through spreadsheets all day and you'll probably never meet someone who needs Medicaid. If you work for states and locality and the administration of those programs, states largely, you definitely will. So keep that in mind. Lastly, this work really matters, and I was foreshadowing that little point there about Medicaid. This is qualitative, you'll have to take my word for it, but I think my fellow panelists will bear this out. A few observations about state and local government. First, as we noted, this is where most government is actually happening. I hope we've driven home the point on that so far. It features every sort of job in almost every field. The work is not easy. I want to put that on the table to start with. And I think that is the case kind of by definition. Bear with me philosophically for a moment. If something ends up on government's plate, if it's in government's job jar, if it's on its bucket, that means it is a shared challenge that is not easily solved by the marketplace or by philanthropy or by people acting on their own. Government's responsibilities tend to be things that are collective action problems, addressing climate change, for instance, or things that affect people at the margins of society. One implication of those facts is that it's really, really important to work well. Which is one of the reasons my organization exists. We're really keyed up about when things don't work well. That was not a keyed up one, but it has to be done right. Related to that, public service and state and local level are really closely linked to the people they serve. And the unprecedented overlapping crises of the first years of this decade have really accelerated the public's reliance on government to do things like provide reasonable information about healthcare issues, secure safety, ensure equal representation and rights under the law. I think that really highlights the indispensable nature of public servants in general and public servants closest to where people live their lives. And it's what makes this work so impactful and rewarding. As a result of that, job satisfaction among young leaders in public service careers at the state and local level is uncommonly high. These are folks starting out, this is based on some survey research I'll allude to later, my organization ran, but our research found that 75% of rising young leaders at state and local government plan to stay in for the long term, which is really remarkable when you think about maybe the evidence or maybe just lazy stereotype. The young people are in general flighty and flip from job to job. I think this is a signal fact that is often not the case in public service. To zero in on that last point a little bit and undermine the impression you may have, this is a recent survey from Mission Square Research Institute on asking people currently in state and local government, actually this is a local government survey, to what extent did the following attract you to your current job in the first place? Number 2 on that list, the personal satisfaction the job gives me for nearly 90% of respondents in this work because I care about this work. And I would say if we just went 10 years down the road when you talk to folks who took the private sector route, I care about this work is not going to be the primary reason folks ended up in that route. God bless you. There's no aspersion on the choices they make, but that is not the norm in jobs. I also want to note something in addition to things you might associate with government, job security or benefits. Salary was number 4 on this list. Many of you have loans, you will all need to pay bills and live lives, and I think sometimes there is the impression that pursuing public service is consigning yourself to a monk-like pauper career. That is generally not the case. It is generally the case that governments do not pay as well as analogous roles in the private sector, but it is not generally the case that they are wildly uncompetitive. So don't let that misimpression lead you in a different direction if you think I can't pay the bills unless I pursue a fairly narrow path. The data does not bear that out. Great. So we finished question number 1. Second question, why do state and local governments need the sorts of people in this room? First, generally speaking, governments need all sorts of talented people. Government is hiring the next generation right now. And I want to underscore, as someone who's had a little bit of runway in the workforce, that that's kind of an extraordinary fact. When I started giving this presentation 4 years ago, this was not quite the fact. These are quite recent headlines. In general, government has been in a hiring slump for most of my adult life, but the last 2 to 3 years have not been the case. Some combination of governments being somewhat more flush with tax revenue, having finally shaken off the doldrums of the recession from 2008, and folks heading for the exits, leading to retirement, are leading to a really competitive hiring market for people who want to pursue government careers in general and state and local governments in particular. This is just a few illustrations from the last couple of years. This is heightened by a generational changeover that is happening right now in the workforce. I recognize this is a so fun and boring looking chart. Our friends at the Bureau of Labor Statistics are not leading with presentation. That's okay. I want to state for you that the median worker in the entire economy is a little over 42 years old. These are some roles in a category called public administration, people who make government systems work. They are older on average in a few specific roles, folks who work in executive offices and legislative bodies, other general government support, the administration of economic programs. They're 5, 6, 7 years older than the average. That is because of the inability to hire sort of over the last decade and a half. But what it means is, one, there is a number of folks likely to head for the exits. I would expect my colleagues to voice what that looks like in their agencies. And also it means there is uncommon opportunity for upward mobility. You want to try lots of different things and maybe you're really interested in getting a promotion a year or 2 into your work. Government is the sort of place that in the next decade or so is going to have uncommonly broad ability for you to move up and forward and around, based on the fact that there is a lot of churn happening. So think about it in terms of what the opportunities are going to look like down the road. I would say that level of nimbleness and advancement is not always typical in federal government, without speaking too broadly about a huge institution that's highly federated. But I would draw a modest contrast there. So next, governments need your skills. Now I mentioned that every single conceivable job exists in state and local government, so it's hard to talk specifically about one set of skills in one discipline. But I'm going to talk broadly here, kind of using a Socratic method called response thesis. So a hypothesis we could put on the table. Graduate degrees in liberal arts and sciences, like you in this room, can find jobs in government. Seems a fairly modest and reasonable thesis. We sort of tested a corollary of this question in a report my organization did 3 years ago. It turns out when looking at a qualitative and quantitative review of the sorts of attributes that lead to people being successful early in their careers in public service, the conclusion is stronger than that. Liberal arts and sciences graduates are uniquely suited to thrive in government and fulfill and impactful careers. So if I warrant for that. Seems real convenient for this group, right? So we asked a cohort of about 1,000 rising leaders in government, what skills did they rate as most valuable in their own success? We're looking over what sorts of attributes people possess that led to them moving forward and moving upward in their careers. To be part of the survey, you had to be managing people, money, or programs, and then promoted at some point in the last 5 years, and be less than 10 years in your career. So we asked a number of these questions. What sorts of things do you think, yeah, this is the thing that probably got people promoted? Shout it out.
Overcoming obstacles.
There you go. Good. All right, the rope-a-dope I'm playing here is that you are probably, man, you skimmed my notes beforehand. The rope-a-dope I'm playing here is, I would imagine you prefer lots of versions of, you need to go get some really, really marketable technical skill, and then you need to turn that into remunerative career. And right now, technology or data analysis or coding often end up being that skill. Those are not unimportant by any means, but it is the case that this set of things came out on top. Or communication, written communication, project management, pushing through and overcoming obstacles. And the reason these skills are important is because government, as we've been talking about, is about solving the big problems that serve people. And that means interpersonal skills, collaboration among institutions and with other sectors. Technical skills aren't enough. They are certainly useful. But most folks we talked to in doing this survey, and I've observed other times, have noted you can learn whatever the technical discipline or the subject matter expertise of the given domain you work in on the job. And that's the case in the employment market in general. However, coming in with some really developed soft skills, critical thinking, lateral thinking, strong communication, good degree of organization, have really unique benefits that set you up for success. So we also did a set of focus groups with this study, and here's some of the qualitative data that I think align nicely with this group. Some of the skills that folks pointed to as most important for rising leaders in government were being critical, complex reasoners, being good listeners, being principled and ethical, being creative, innovative, not being afraid of or uncomfortable with uncertainty. And I think that aligns pretty strongly with some of the attributes that folks in the liberal arts and sciences possess, especially those like you who are top of that disciplinary field. So if you're not, in terms of your chosen major paths and their alignment with careers of service. Lastly, governments need your values. They need people who care about the sorts of things you care about. And I had a lot of fun reading the survey in each of your backgrounds. And I want to make a few general statements about folks of your age cohort, even though I know it's extremely off-putting to make general statements about millions of people. But I'm going to do it. So first, this isn't news to you, but your generation is ready and enthusiastic and championing a bit to drive change. Over the last decade or so, the youngest generation in the country has become more and more politically engaged. 70% of you have talked to your friends about politics and elections. 70% have tried or will try to convince others to vote. 60% of you have attended a march or a demonstration. It is generally the case that you are not throwing up your hands and walking away from societal challenges. You are leaning in and trying to find limits of your impact, which is only going to grow as you enter the professional world. I also want to note that one interesting ideological change is that your generation tends to have a more expansive view of the things you expect the government to do, have a role in. And there are probably a wide variety of things in this room on how large government should be or what the appropriate place for it is. And that's good and healthy, and I hope you have been exploring those vigorously with things. But on balance, on a host of issues from healthcare, climate change, immigration, poverty, you are increasingly more likely to expect governments to respond directly and vigorously. You are interested in issues of public concern. You want a government that does things about the things you care about and reflect your values. And here's where we pivot back from a political opinion to a career imperative. If you want that to be so, then you need to step up and be the leaders in governments, which is the institution that drives the change on the issues you care about. It is simply not enough to pressure governments externally. It is much more impactful to drive those changes internally, within the institutions that actually control the levers, and see section 1 of the presentation, overwhelmingly that is going to be state and local government outside of a few very specialized domains. As crises arise, like those we've seen in the last few years and those we will see in the future, it matters enormously that there be excellent people in public institutions with the skills and the knowledge and the values ready to respond to them. And these are the sorts of institutions where there are I also want to note one other thing that I just so fascinated by this research from the Century Foundation. One of the reasons government struggles to make progress in some respects is because it is a broadly distrusted institution. These numbers are actually a couple years old. They're updating the survey this month, but it's not out yet, so I couldn't prove it for the chart. There's pretty low scores on this chart for trust in government, from the 30s down to the high teens for different categories of people that you can see across the bottom there. I want to observe two important takeaways. First, state and local government is better off than the other levels of government. People tend to be a little more trusting, given a little more leeway to try new things, to tackle sticky problems through shared public endeavor than through going alone. I think it's generally fair to say that if you're fired up by innovation or experimentation or want to try something else in a public service-oriented career, state and local government, and especially local government, is really well aligned with that orientation. Second, this crisis of mistrust is especially pronounced among disadvantaged communities. So if you are deeply motivated by inequalities or inequities and you want a career that helps people bridge historic divides, and folks who are traditionally left on the outside, working in government, and especially state and local government, where government intersects with people's lives directly, is the right place to explore that. One final observation here from a quotation at the top that has been misattributed to Thomas Edison for some years. He never said that vision without execution is hallucination. It's really important to remember that state and local government is overwhelmingly focused on implementation and execution, on getting things done that align with the promises that governments have made, and it's the place where slogans and activism and political principles have their proven ground. And I think there was a beautiful illustration of this in a vignette that is getting a little old, but still fits perfectly in the rollout of the Affordable Care Act just now, 2 years ago. You may not remember this, but the fight over the ACA was largely at the level of policy. The labeled Obamacare by its detractors and then by its defenders. Tens of millions of dollars over a year of frenetic legislative activity in 2009, 2010 were spent kind of architecturing a huge and complicated and sophisticated piece of legislation that was aiming to extend healthcare to about 50 million people and bend the cost curve down. And then the bill passed, and a year and a half went by, and very famously the website didn't work when the thing rolled out. Which is a very frustrating and I think troublesome metaphor. But under the hood, there was one yet further interesting implication, which is that states have the responsibility of setting up state-based exchanges, which is supposed to get about 20 to 50 million people access to healthcare. And they had to do it themselves. And here's a story of two states of approximately the same size that had to tackle an internal implementation challenge, classic government project. Mix of regulation, external engagement, budgeting, technology, public communications. These two articles are from a couple months apart from each other. By January 2014, Kentucky rolled 126,000 people in ACA plans, on the way to about 500,000 that it put into an exchange. It would be a full 12 months later before Oregon enrolled one. And this is a beautiful illustration of the differences in how state and local government took something that was enormous and very expensive and ambitious at the national level and delivered or failed to deliver it to people in their actual lives. At that point in 2014, no one in the country, not the policymakers on Capitol Hill who wrote the legislation, had done more to extend healthcare to low-income people than a team in the Kentucky state government. And on the other end of that spectrum, no one had done less than the analogous team in Oregon state government, that's Oregon, and they could ultimately figure it out. If you care about an issue, if you actually care about an issue, if you are not living through slacktivism and sloganeering, the way to show that is to pursue a career where you work on that issue in a way that intersects with people's lives. That is very often state and local government. It is often not working at the very, very top of the public service food chain. That's not a bad thing to do, it's not a bad thing to be, but it is important to remember where the action happens. So this is just a vignette from some research we did, but I really like to capture some ideas from a city manager in Culver City, California. Government is an opportunity to bring your analytical skills and talents, serve communities love to have conversations, discussions, decision making. The work that Helen does extends opportunity to participate in the public conversation so directly across a variety of dimensions that folks care about. So the last section here, before I give way to my excellent colleagues, how do I get it? Let's say I have successfully persuaded you that state and local government should be on your radar. It should at least be one of the things you consider if you're looking for the next phase of your career after you graduate from college. So first, I encourage thinking about your interests a little bit differently. I think there is a big temptation to look at your major and then look for a job that contains the word of your major. This is the case for some roles. If you majored in accounting, that would be really nice, but I don't believe anybody's majoring in accounting for the liberal arts and social sciences. I would encourage sort of thinking both of what disciplinary interests you care about. Oh, I'm really fired up about this policy, or I really, really care about this subject matter. And also the types of things you like to do throughout the day, the way you like to get work done. So here's a few examples of non-obvious but quite numerous roles in public service careers, including at the state and local level, that might map onto interests you have. And this is not comprehensive, this is just things I have observed. If you're the sort of person that likes economics or math, there's a few titles in budget and resource management in government, where you actually make the decisions about where resources go to fund or not fund public programs. If you care about democracy and civics, there is a huge workforce whose job it is to make elections happen. It's been under a lot of strain, a lot of attention lately, and the imperative that it perform well is stronger than ever. If you care about the environment and climate, there are so many roles, in addition to the explicit one that Sarah's going to talk about, but many, many other roles that I'm sure she can shed more light on than I can, that implicate carbon emissions, like city planning, zoning, transit. If you just generally like running stuff, if you're the person who inherits responsibilities all the time, city management is a really, really exciting, interesting career route that people have not heard of, but I trust that Rebecca will correct that in separate mention of the greater specificity than I could. If you like talking, something I have an interest in, then there is an entire branch of work around communicating government programs and government imperatives to the public. And I think one thing we've seen in recent years is when we fail to do that well, people's lives can deteriorate quickly. So taking your interests in terms of policy and taking your interest in terms of what sorts of stuff you like to do jointly inform where you might want to look or the types of careers you might want to consider. So for nuts and bolts here, let's talk about brass tacks. Unhelpfully, there is not a truly comprehensive listing of open opportunities across state and local government. This is because there are 50 states, you probably knew that. There are 2,143 counties or county equivalents, you may not have known that, but if you did kudos, call me. And there's 109,000 cities. Wildly fragmented marketplace, which means that the opportunities aren't all in the same place, not surprising. If you are inclined to make them so, if you want to build me LinkedIn.reliance.org, let's talk afterwards, and I would love that to happen. I would observe that the largest aggregator I am aware of is governmentjobs.com. It's run by a company that provides back-end HR software to government, but also lists their posting. Last night there were 41,000 public sector jobs when I skimmed through. Indeed tends to cluster to draw in governments. There are some convoluted and boring reasons, namely related to how LinkedIn is priced, that kind of deters governments from posting on LinkedIn. So in skimming opportunities, those are good places to start, but I want to be more tactical than that for you. First, don't forget all of the components of state and local government. And I'm so delighted to have a county colleague here, because local government includes cities, states, and counties, and sometimes counties get left out of the equation. Many roles aren't in executive branch agencies. You're probably thinking of the Department of whatever, but so many functions of government are accomplished outside of executive branch agencies, including city councils, legislators, election administrators, treasurers, court systems. There are independent authorities that deliver government services. They're sort of legally separated from them. Transit authorities, utilities, housing authorities, and then cross-government organizations that coordinate government work. So this is just I'll center on this next. Consult this list if you're so inclined. But the firmament is even larger still than what you might be thinking of based on section 1 of our presentation. Foot in the door, this will not be news, this is not novel, this is almost a pointless slide. But it is trite but true that if you are able to do an internship in anything you care about, it is so worth doing. The data on how people find careers bears out very strongly that internships are extremely formative experiences. Either I found a thing and I loved it and I pursued it, or I found a thing I thought I loved and I didn't love it, so I course corrected. Either way is a good and incredible outcome, a way to explore something without committing a lot of time. There has generally been a turn towards converting, I think, a shameful number of unpaid internships in government into paid internships. I searched this earlier this week. One of the work of the city of Sioux Falls, they have a new internship program, which is neat. As above, very, very fragmented, so these aren't super concentrated, but you all live somewhere, you would all be interested in maybe exploring some policy domain in your own community. It is almost certainly the case that some city or county or state that you live in has an internship program, which is a really reliable way. When you are finished, when you are graduating, I think one thing that might be aligned with very high achieving crowds are fellowship programs. You probably heard about the Presidential Management Fellowship yesterday from my colleagues who were talking federally. Fellowships combine the exposure of a new job in the full-time working world with the safety net of professional development. So they're time limited, so it's a way to try things out. Here are a few. I really encourage exploring a few of these programs. I know well. In fact, I've spoken with the heads of both Coding Forward and Government for America in the last 24 hours. Government for America, Lead for America, and Coding Forward are all really great time-limited fellowships aimed at recent college graduates. Government Lead for America places students in county, local, and state government. They slightly lane and also sort of don't. And Coding Forward puts folks with technology and data science and web development background into governments to help improve government's analytic capacity. A few other great opportunities here include the Local Government Management Fellowship from ICMA. You used to want to, oh, fabulous. Am I right in that it is postgraduate, it's master's focused, or is it also undergraduate? It is master's focused. So if you chose to do a master's, fabulous on-ramp through ICMA, the International City Government Association for Local Government Service. Another option to think about fellowships, I'll send this around too. This is not comprehensive, but this is a number of location-based fellowships. Many cities and states have set up sort of skip the line, high flyer programs where they recruit really bright people, cohort them, provide them professional development experiences, and deploy them in state or local agencies. Here's just a few examples. I started my career in the New York City Urban Fellows Program. That was my introduction to government. But this is just a number of opportunities that I selected because they have some geographic spread. If anyone does the San Francisco Fellows Program, we encourage them to get a logo, that's just Arial in blue. But you can see why this was Cleveland, City County, Los Angeles, the Wygotsky Fellowship from Long Beach, California, Texas, Florida, New York, DC, etc. So lastly, you open universities, but excellent universities, they are partners in equipping you with the skills and connections to make the public service leap. To career services staff who often have relationships with state and local government folks who are nearby. If you are exploring advanced degree and continuing education programs, many research centers on campus or degree programs work directly with governments in your region on technical problems. That is a fabulous way to get in the door. Faculty in domains that touch a policy issue you care about, probably consult with or talk to the relevant government folks nearby who work on those issues and provide resources and feedback and information. They are a fabulous source of information. The public service does recruit, does attend job fairs, so go to them, talk to folks, and really think a lot about alumni engagement. One observation I have made about people in government, and especially people in local government, is there is a ton, the set of traits that makes you want to pursue this career makes you the sort of person who really wants to talk to the next generation about opportunities. So uncommonly likely group of people to take time out of a busy and demanding day to help you think about opportunities. And I promise you, as someone who's been in government, nothing tickles you more than when some really bright and talented and thoughtful young person wants to learn about your work. That's the case in any job, but I think you're much likely to get a positive response from folks in government. This is a question I wanted to throw in. I'm not going to belabor it too much, but if you need a special resume, you had the resume writing workshop from some partnership maybe yesterday. So no, but sort of. I like this right though. I would say that in general, the imperative for a truly different way of conveying your skills is lower at the state and local level than the federal level. It's not quite the same game. This is a virtue I worked on, among other things, when I was in the federal government, federal hiring, and the fact that you can't use a normal resume is a huge impediment that causes all sorts of problems across the institution. Is bad. I would note that I think there's a lot of value if you're applying for careers in public service to explicitly invoke key skills in the job description that people have to make these decisions need to be able to validate why they select one candidate over another. And the most straightforward way of doing that is saying, this skill was mentioned on the job, and this skill was mentioned in the resume. That will become more and more an issue as we're further down the track, I think. And also some states and localities don't use resumes-based hiring in the same way. There would be an application portal that is bespoke to their needs. Some places use some service examinations, which is have another way of indicating their aptitude. So I would say less intense, and if you were off-put by some of the elements of the federal resume process, the situation is marginal, is better, is measurably better, I think, at other levels of government. Did you talk about the PSLF at any point? Okay, I'm not gonna spend too long on this, but this is a bailiwick of mine, that I would love to talk about for the past home. You've probably heard of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Many of you will probably have loans that will quite reasonably inform your career choices and might, to your earlier point, deter you from pursuing careers in public service. The PSLF program, which originated in 2007, will forgive graduate and undergraduate loans in, and I've underlined these things for a reason, because there's a ton of work around this, qualifying loan types, through federal direct loans, the ones from the Department of Education, through a service. If you make 120 payments on a qualifying repayment plan while working at a qualifying employer, which are largely governments and 501c3 nonprofits and a few other categories, all governments now. This is an enormously powerful lever. I will confess that it has been slightly poorly implemented, but it has been improved a ton. Up until early last year, there was something like 0.1% of people who applied received forgiveness. They have now made a lot of progress and forgiven tens of billions of dollars in cumulative loans to public service. A very powerful tool to trade your commitment to the public well-being for discharging your loans. I think it's a shared win for all of us, but it is a little complicated. So I'll show you these slides around. If you choose to pursue public service, there's a great organization that I am part of called the PSLF Coalition that does monthly webinars to ensure you are on track. It's really important to make sure you're on track. Otherwise, you will make an unpleasant discovery at the end of 10 years. So don't do that. So I'm going to close up because I talked too long. In general, I am not naive. I know you are very well sought after. I know that there will be an enormous number of opportunities that you have. And I wanna provide some, in addition to the partisan state local service, I want to provide a way of thinking about whether you personally may be well aligned with state and local service. So if you care deeply about a place, you are motivated by somewhere that has formed you, maybe if it's where you grew up, maybe it's where you went to college. State and local service is going to be a way to improve people's lives there. It exceeds anything else you can do, either at some higher level of government or in some field. If you like really tangible impact you can measure and feel, you like to see the effects of your actions on a reasonably short timeline. State and local service is aligned with that much better than anything else in the public service and government world. If you're really looking for like rapid opportunity to move upward or move quickly within, state and local government is rather famous for quick advances. If you want to learn every facet of a given topic or a given policy area, if the thing you care most about in the world is infrastructure, which would be fabulous and great, you might go work with the federal government and work on one dimension of that, maybe financing. Working at state and local government, you will touch every single component of it and understand the full universe. It's a great place to get your arms around an issue that you care about quickly. And lastly, if you want to move into being a nationally recognized expert on a given issue or a given policy area, ultimately in your career, spending some time in state and local service, doing that full facet, get your arms around something, is the way to show that you understand the whole thing. And I want to harken back to the example of the Affordable Care Act. I don't know for sure, but I would bet the folks who wrote the exchange legislation on Capitol Hill had not worked in the relevant state government agencies to be able to predict that that would go awry and significantly undermine all the work they did, because they didn't put in financing or in the implementation instructions on how to build those exchanges. And that showed when people didn't get access to healthcare for a really long time. So if you want to go into some domain, seeing where it affects people's lives is a really powerful lever to have a career that's really impactful. All right, this has been me. I'm really happy to talk with anyone about this work. Really excited to hear from everybody else. Sorry about this.
There you go, okay. Well, good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here. And so perfect to call your presentation because we're like on the same wavelength, what I'm going to talk about. And you've given me permission now, since you did give your presentation first, to just continue to say, this is an awesome chat. And if I was a salesperson, I'm going to try to sell you on this. So thank you for doing it first.
Absolutely.
All right, so just a little bit background about me. I got my undergrad at Washington College in Chestertown, Maryland, a really small school on the Eastern Shore. I in reading over all of your background and seeing the survey ahead of time, I think a lot of us were the same way. Like I was really thinking about international work. I was thinking about the State Department. I was thinking about working in diplomacy. That's sort of what I was thinking about. But I had an internship that changed my mind, and we're going to talk more about that. After my undergrad degree, I went to American University to get my master's in public administration. And I did go right away to graduate school, and I could talk about the pros and cons to that for hours. So if you want to talk about that, let me know. So just to give you sort of a basic sort of career map of how I got to where I am today, that internship that changed my mind was I did a legislative internship during my senior year of college at the Maryland General Assembly. I worked for one of the senators there, and I got to talk to residents every day on the phone, and that was it. I'm actually making an impact on people. That was what changed my career trajectory, and helped me see that all of the skills that I'm getting in international work, in talking about diplomacy and things like that, all of those topics, you can do every day in local government, and I'm gonna tell you how. After that, I was at American University, and as we just talked about with loans and money and things like that, during graduate school, it made sense to also work. And I also did full-time grad school and full-time work. And I can tell you about a million reasons why I may not recommend that. But it was able to help me pay for my graduate studies. So I was working at American University. I was actually working in the Disability Services Office, running a program there to help students with disabilities. And again, that was sort of further helping me. It actually aligned really well with working on a Master's of Public Administration, because I was directly supporting the population. Now, it was a college population, but I was seeing an impact on a day-to-day basis, and that just sort of further helped me solidify my interest. Right after graduate school, I landed an amazing job at the International City County Management Association, located here in Washington, D.C., but serving the entire local government career, both nationally and internationally. So it actually was really feeding my interest in a lot of ways. So I did still have that itch for international work and for talking with people in other countries and supporting the work that they do there. But what I want to emphasize today is that international work is local work. What I was talking about in my undergraduate classes and even my master's classes, we were talking about communities outside of this country, but they were communities. And what I would emphasize to you all today is that if you're interested in international work, which is absolutely fantastic, go for it. But I want to tell you that the work or the types of tactical work that you're doing, to think about, supporting communities internationally or doing diplomacy work, you can absolutely do all of those things in local government. I jumped around a little bit in ICMA. First, I was working on their content engagement team, and honestly, I got that job because when I was in grad school, I did a lot of writing, and I really like writing. And it goes back to your point about those liberal arts skills. I was a really good writer, and I was interested in government. I was interested in local government specifically. And this was a perfect match. They were looking for someone with a writing background who kind of was interested in this stuff. And that was a great entrance in, because I got to do a lot of research writing. There was data that was being collected, and then they'd say, okay, Rebecca, take all this data, make it into a really nice report, make it into a really nice presentation. So I loved doing that. And then I switched over to a different team at ICMA, working as a program manager for the LGBT program and all of our student chapter programs. So I spent just about 2 years supporting exactly this population right here in front of me. I was helping students figure out if an MPA or an SPP was right for them. I was helping students figure out if local government, either city, county, or state was a right path for them. And I enjoyed that immensely. That was super fun work because I got to talk to students every day. But my itch to actually be in local government was there, and I was trying to work my way in. So I was lucky enough to land a job in the city of Frederick, Maryland, not too far from here. I served as the first department head for our Department of Equity and Inclusion. That was a really interesting jump into local government. It was a department that didn't exist. There was no budget and no staff. But they hired me, and they said, create something. And it was really hard. It was really hard. But I learned so much to come into something that did not exist and leave when there was something there. That was a really neat experience, and I could talk more about jumping into something that you're completely uncertain about. You know you have the skills and the background, but you're jumping into something that doesn't exist. I can talk so much more about that. And I had a really great time there, and they brought me in on so many things, and that gave me the opportunity to then be able to jump into my current role, which is being the borough manager for Millersville Borough in Pennsylvania, Lancaster County, Amish country, if you've heard of it. it is a fascinating place to do local government, and I'll tell you more about it. But that's sort of just my general path of I got to where I am today. Oh, and I have to stop before I continue going and say, during this time when I was at AU working at ICMA, I was very involved in the DC Association of Climate and CACLA. When I got to DC, I needed a group of friends. I had my graduate school friends, that was great, but I was looking to engage in DC, and as anybody who's lived in DC knows, it's a small place, but it's a big place, and it's really kind of challenging sometimes to find your spot. So I found the DC Association of Climate and CACLA, and first I just got involved as a member, and then I led the membership program, then I was VP, and then I was president, and loved it. If you all become Climate CACLA, which I'm sure you will, get involved with your local association where you signed up. It's a great group of people, and it's a good way to have the conversations that you enjoy having while you're, maybe at work and doing other things. Then in the evening, you can go to a Climate CACLA event and talk about the values of the arts and things like that. So that's my plus for that. So you're probably, what does a borough manager do? And as we like to say at ICMA, this is like the hottest career that you've never heard of. For the most part, people, and gosh, I know the whole thing about the American education system and why they don't talk about the professional side of government, how probably everybody here has heard of the mayor, you've heard of city council, but you might not have heard of a city manager, a borough manager, a county manager. So, and that's a problem, we gotta fix that with the American education system. But anyway, as a borough manager, I manage a community of about 8,000 residents. I oversee the borough's 30 employees in our different departments, our admin department, code enforcement, dealing with zoning, our streets department, our sewer department, and I manage a general operating budget of about $5 million. And I love this job. I really do. I truly do love what I do. So my favorite part of what I do every day is that I get to wear a million different hats every day. And if you're somebody who likes challenging you and you like not every day looking the same and getting to be out and doing different things, this is absolutely a great role to consider. I work on the administration of the budget. Actually, budget season is starting for me next week, so I'm really excited. It takes 6 months to put together the budget for the next year. So, and our budget year is actually the calendar year. So we started next week putting the budget together, spend all the way until December until council approves it. And then we, start the budget year, then the next year, then 6 months later, you do the whole thing again. But I will tell you that I hated math and numbers, and I thought that I would hate this part of local government. But gosh, do I actually really love it? Because you don't have to be good at the number part. You have to be good at the thinking part, about thinking about the resources that you have, how you want to use them, and how you want to meet policy goals through the way that you spend money. If goals are in infrastructure, how are you going to spend money in that way in order to achieve those goals? If your goals that year is related to hiring and really focusing on personnel that year, and that's where you're thinking about putting your resources. So it's fun. I'm also the tax collector, so this job wears a lot of hats. So I technically collect all of the borough taxes. Now, do I literally go around everyone's house and collect taxes? No, I do not do that. People usually send us a check. But I'm officially our tax collector, so I collect the taxes with the support of staff, and then sign off and then send them where they're supposed to go. But it is kind of nice to literally see, and sometimes I wish that I could bring residents into my office and show them, the taxes that you're literally giving to us. It's going to the trash collecting program. It's going to our recycling program. It's like I can literally show them where their money is going, which I would argue is something that the federal government never talk about. I technically help execute and enforce the laws of the Commonwealth. We're Pennsylvania's Commonwealth, and we're very proud of that. and all our ordinances and resolutions and bylaws of the borough. So I get a lot of questions all day long related to, okay, what does our ordinance say? What is our law? How do we get that information? You know, in 1990, whatever, what did council pass that tells us how we're supposed to do our streets, or what types of trees are supposed to be planted around our streets, you know, things like that. Preparation of the budget for each meeting that council has. That is a pretty big job. It just sounds like maybe you're spreading an agenda, but there's a lot of politics involved in that. There's a lot of talking to council members to figure out what needs to be on the agenda, and then of course anything business related needs to be on there. The way that borough code works in Pennsylvania is that typically the borough manager is also the borough secretary, the borough treasurer, secretary of the zoning hearing board, purchasing officer, right to know officer. So I literally wear a million hats every day, but it is the most fun part of the job, honestly. I get to help determine how we're gonna spend our money on a daily basis, not just big picture, but little picture as well. If people send in right to know requests, it's, I think, called something different in every state. In Pennsylvania, it's called a right to know. What's it called?
FOIA.
Yes, FOIA, thank you. So people come, you know, write in and say, hey, I want this public record, and then write it to them. I oversee the operations of our street and sewer systems. We, in the borough, we have our own sewer department. It's actually not an authority for us. It is our sewer system that we manage, and then our street department. This is probably sounds really interesting and weird, but I really love what our street department does. And last week I said, hey, you guys are doing some patching on the street. Can I come out and watch? And they let me come out, and they even let me pour some blacktop, which is really exciting. But so we never get to do that at the federal level. I have to go down with the street department and make sure that our street is great. It's fun. It really is. And because I don't have enough going on, I also work service as secretary of our Chicago Borough Association, which I will tell you is one of the great things about local government as well. The community aspect of local government is fantastic, especially where I am right now in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of boroughs and townships and counties and everything in Pennsylvania, and we all get to work together, because for the most part, if you're a borough manager or a township manager, you're the only one in your community. There's only one borough manager in Millersville. So we get together a lot with other managers and talk about what we're doing, because there really isn't anyone doing the same job that we are in our area. So it's really nice to be able to work together, find out, hey, I heard you guys had a great ordinance. Can I see a copy of that ordinance when you're thinking about passing something? Or hey, you figured out a great solution to this wicked problem. Please, we're dealing with this wicked problem here. Please help. So I really enjoy that aspect of local government. So now I want to tell you what we want to have. So there's many reasons to love this work. You get to use your strengths to create and sustain successful communities. You all probably have a lot of unique strengths that you could bring to roles like this. You get to face new challenges every day. Literally, I spend the first hour of my day from 8 to 9. My sewer department head comes in my office, my street department head comes in my office, and my code enforcement officer comes to my office, and they give me the problem of the day. And one could see that as a negative, that there are problems going on, but it's just easy to accept that there's always going to be problems. So you just sort of take that and you run with it. But there's something new every day, and that makes this work really fun. You get to be the problem solver to local issues that have broad impact. If you, as Peter was saying, if you care about an issue and you actually want to see the impact, you get to solve that problem on a daily basis at the local level, and you're having a broad impact, because any decision that is made for a small municipality is, in my case, it's having an impact on 8,000 people. So you really get to have broad impact. And oftentimes, if you do something good, another local government is going to be like, oh, that was really awesome, I'm going to do that too. And then suddenly the whole state is doing it. You get to become a subject matter expert in everything from human resources to wastewater to strategic planning to code enforcement to everything. I'm getting a crash course right now in sewer systems. That's not something that I necessarily brought a background in, but they saw that I was willing to learn it, and so I'm learning it now. I'm not necessarily actually doing wastewater treatment or anything like that, but I'm learning how to manage it. I'm learning how they need to spend the money in that department fund to be able to do what we need to do. Because as not important or exciting as it sounds, wastewater and sewer is very, very important. Very important. You can see the impact that you have, and you actually get to talk with those who support. I love when residents come in and want to complain, and I know that sounds weird, but when they're coming in to complain, that means that they actually care about something going on in the community, and I get to talk to them, I get to figure out a way to solve that issue. Now, you know, sometimes there are people who come too often, and they kind of abuse that relationship I like to have, but you get to really talk to the people that you're supporting, and you really get to know the community, and I really enjoy that part of this work. And you get to work with elected officials at the local, state, and federal level. I often am in meetings with our county commissioners talking about any policies that the county is thinking about that will trickle down to the local government. I get to actually work with our federal elected officials as well, in terms of if we're looking for broad support budget-wise at the federal level, if we're looking to do a big project and we need to be looking at funding. So if you like working with elected officials, this is also a great way to do so because you get to work with them at every level. Local government needs you. You have the skills that we're looking for. I'll tell you this, I'm literally just sent an offer letter to someone yesterday who whose background, whose degree is in creative writing. But she's interested in government and didn't think that she would be, but I said, I need somebody who can write. I need somebody who has that background in communication. And so I'm hiring her into a clerk role. I'm gonna teach her all the government stuff, but she's got those core skills that I need. I need somebody who can write. I need somebody who can send an email. You wouldn't imagine how hard, maybe you all feel this too, you wouldn't imagine how hard it is sometimes to find people who can just write a great email. Well, government needs you. These numbers I think are mostly correct. They're actually big numbers. They're probably a lot of numbers too. But 85% of U.S. cities with populations greater than 500, and an additional 372 counties have a professional manager. There's a lot of opportunity if this career sounds at all interesting to you. On average, city, town, and county managers are earning somewhere between $90,000 to $150,000 a year, give or take. So as Peter was saying, you can make good money in this career. It's, you know, maybe you're not making $500,000, but you're making good money. And there's so many opportunities for growth. You know, typically working with different sized communities, or working between city and county government, there's a lot of opportunities to move up or move around. And just give you an idea of sort of the traditional career path before I finish up. And I say traditional with quotations because there really isn't a nice clean way necessarily to the type of role that I'm in. I didn't take the traditional path, so to speak, but this is one way that one can think about it. A lot of folks go to graduate school to get an MPA or an MPP degree, and I've done an internship. A lot of times that lands folks in positions such as the budget or management analyst, that really gets you some hands-on experience in departments or across many. Sometimes that also lands folks then to an assistant to the manager, who's typically doing special projects, supporting the manager's larger initiatives. Then maybe moving into an assistant manager, department head type of role, overseeing one or more departments. And then serving as manager, serving as the chief administrative officer for whatever government that you're thinking about. But there is no necessarily same path for everyone, but this is sort of one way to think about it if this appeals to you. That's all I got for this morning. My emails are on there. I'm happy with business cards as well. I love talking with young public servants about finding their paths, typically in state and local. And I also have mentored a bunch of students who are interested in MPA or MPP degrees, if you're thinking about those. I love to help students crack those letters of interest to their graduate school or thinking about which ones are gonna be right for you. So I love to help, let me know how I can help. And thanks.
Hi, how's everyone doing? I wanna make sure I will leave time for questions, so I have my watch right here because I really wanna make sure that we do have time to hear from you, so I'll try to.
Sarah, we can show an extra 10 minutes, so if that works with your schedule.
Oh,
you know,
great, wonderful, okay,
Yeah.
fantastic, so, I'm so honored to be here, it's really nice to meet you, I don't have slides, so you'll have to just stare at our headshots. So I'm Sarah Kogel-Smucker, I'm the Climate Change Officer for Montgomery County, Maryland. We're this suburban area in Maryland, straight north of DC, with a population of around a little over 1 million residents and a $7.1 billion budget. So not originally from around here, and I'll kind of walk through a bit of a career, and I'm really excited about answering questions and sort of seeing what you might be interested in. But I grew up in New York City, and I grew up in New York City in the 1980s, which was not the best time for New York City. And there was not a lot of green space. I played soccer quite literally in the middle of a power plant because that's where the soccer field was at the time. That soccer field does not exist anymore. They do not put children in the middle of a power plant to play soccer anymore. But I went to Grinnell College in Iowa. So sort of did the reverse of someone going from a small town to a big city. I wanted to go from a big city to a small town, and I majored in philosophy. I absolutely loved philosophy. I loved the academics of it. I loved trying to understand the writing and kind of having it click and making arguments about it. I also got really involved in my student environmental group, and that became a bigger and bigger part of college to me. It was the late 1990s, and so we were working on deforestation, we were working on prairie preservation, we were working on water quality, but there was also this issue called climate change that we started to hear about, and it seemed really important and kind of a big deal, and the grown-ups seemed to have no plan. And so we were working to get politicians to commit to plans to address climate change. And it was really amazing to meet with political staff, to organize protests, to get news coverage, and to feel like I could engage in an issue. And so when I was graduating, I really did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and when I grew up was getting closer and closer. And so I decided I wanted to try to make a career of this environmental advocacy if I could. And so I ended up, and the reason that I did is because I liked the way it felt to work on the issues. I liked the people that I ended up working with. I liked seeing a result. And it felt like a worthwhile way to try to spend my time. And so I took a job at an environmental nonprofit in New York City, and then up in Albany, and worked for environmental nonprofits for 4 years. And as I was in Albany, we were working on passing legislation and getting regulations implemented, and I got more and more interested in the legal side of it, and decided to go to law school to continue environmental advocacy. So I went to Boston College Law School. And in the contrast of not going straight through undergrad, I could say after we've worked a really intense job, lobbying in Albany for a nonprofit environmental organization was very fun, but very intense. grad school was amazing. I was able to go full-time. I could buy my groceries in the middle of the day, and it all felt like wildly luxurious in a way that college could not, because I could wake up and start studying early in a way that I couldn't in college. And so, when I did do internships both at a nonprofit and at state government, and when I was graduating law school, spoke to a lot of environmental leaders and advocates that I had come across and really respected. Where should I go? And literally without fail, everyone in New York City who I spoke with said the best training I could get was working for New York City government. So local government wasn't on my radar, but these were the people whose careers I most respected, and all of them said, try to get this job if you can. And so I did. And I thought I would, there was a 3-year commitment, I thought it was really long, and I thought I would just take a few years to go back to nonprofits, and then I loved it. So I worked for the environmental division, so we represented city agencies on developing environmental policy, legal compliance, litigation, environmental compliance, and I did everything from argue in a packed courtroom to defend the rollout of the city's city bike program, which was wildly controversial at the time because people didn't like where the placement of the bike stations were, and so got, criticized by my argument in the New York Post, and also got to really work on climate change a lot, which was something I worked on in nonprofits and still was hoping to make a career of, and I was the primary lawyer for the city's post-Hurricane Sandy rebuilding and resilience plan, which was $1.2 billion plan to use the federal money to rebuild from Sandy in a way that would make the city more resilient. And then I was the lawyer for the major federal infrastructure projects that came out of it, and including the East Side Coastal Resilience Project, which is a plan to elevate the East River Park and build a seawall, including a wall protecting the power plant that I once played soccer in. And I've been watching that project from job to job to job since, and it's under construction on the wall that protects that power plant that no longer has people play soccer in it. Was built, and I worked on a lot on the creation and expansion of Brooklyn Bridge Park, and was able this year, last year, to take my daughters back and literally like run and play in the park that I had seen blueprints of and helped create. But in this time I got married and had my first child, and my husband never took to New York, so it was time to leave. We decided to settle in this region, and I got a mid-career fellowship at NYU Law, funded by Bloomberg, to be in the DCAG's Attorney General's office, to staff up and lead DC's efforts to join a multi-state coalition to oppose Trump administration environmental rollback. So they were proposing regulations that from our perspective would significantly weaken the protections available under the laws for things including power plant pollution. And we were highly successful in working with some of the most brilliant lawyers in the country to oppose that effort, and a lot of those proposed regulations never went into effect, and those protections are still in place. So it was really amazing to get to do that. I went to the office, but then I got really into clean energy work on the theme of local government, where you can, no one in the AG's office was doing regional clean energy, and it seemed like climate policy and energy policy were starting to really converge, and I felt like we should be involved, and I taught myself it because you can do that in local government. And I spearheaded the creation of the Office of People's Council's Climate Change section, which they're the ratepayer advocates in the district. So they represent their government entity, but an independent entity that represents electric and gas residents, and historically, would fight rate increases or educate people on how to read their bill or, challenge a missed charge, and they still do that, and they do it really amazingly well, but they also now, while they're educating people to understand their bills, speak to them about how climate change is gonna impact their electric bill, and as they're advocating for Public Service Commission on rate increases, they're also advocating for climate solutions, and so I spearheaded that change of the department, which was amazing to get to do. And now I am the climate change officer of Montgomery County, and the through line is, we've settled in Montgomery County during that time, and we plan on staying there long term, and so for the last 16 years, I've served the local government where I've lived. I was really nervous when I settled in DC. I was like, oh no, I might have to work at bed at some point, and I still might. But I just love getting to drive past something and knowing why it was built at that angle, or signing up for a weather alert and knowing the person who sent that alert out, or getting to work on a major federally funded infrastructure project that literally protects the community I grew up in. And so I'm in the county executive's office, and I lead our effort to meet our climate change goals of reducing climate change pollution. We have some of the most ambitious goals in the country, reducing climate change pollution 80% by 2020 and 100% by 2035. I don't do that much of that work. That's work done by the departments, but what I do is coordinate that work, communicate it, inform residents about it, advise the county executive on policy decisions related to that work, and lobby the county council for advancing that work. And I coordinate a special look at the budget each year where we pull all of the various different climate investments out from the Department of Transportation and the Department of Environment to our Department of General Services and look at them collectively so that we are prioritizing limited dollars in the absolute climate priorities, not just on the department's own priorities. And so that is, I echo budgets are moral documents, and getting to affect the trajectory of that. So for example, I felt like we needed to increase the pace of our electric vehicle and zero emission vehicle purchasing, and I recommended to the county executive additional funds. The department gets those funds, was thrilled about that, and we recommended the county council, and the county council funded it, and we're gonna be buying some RFPs this year that we had planned previously. So I'm really honored to do this work, and I've been trying to make the impact I can on this issue, since 1998, and this has for me been the way to do it in a way that makes sense, connects me to my own community, and feels like something I can understand what I'm doing, and feel good about it. So thanks.
So much. I am going to give you all one microphone, and then I'm going to run the other microphone for questions.